Hey everybody, welcome back to the Spin Rack. This is Mars here. I'm here with my boy Cal. Cal, say what's up, guys.
Hey, what's going on? We're ready to rock.
Hey, today we're doing a comic review. Love it or skip it. It's Kneel Before Zod. As you know, tends to be the antagonist um in most versions of media where he's about who Zod, I believe it is, and that's Ursa and his son. But in this instance, we believe he is going to be the hero, if not the protagonist. Um, it's the basic setup is he's basically starting a brand new Candor, and they're just basically starting a new Candor, and they have I think a world in space. I don't know what, I'm not that familiar with that particular part, but one of the worlds of, not worlds, but I think one of the cities of the old Candor is in stasis, and he's basically waiting to get the world that he's on prepared for them to come out and multiply and have a new generation of Kryptonians, and basically, so that's what he's basically doing, and that's the start of the story. So, Cal, what is your take on that so far?
Okay, historically, General Zod as a character was not a popular character. He was one of a group of Kryptonian criminals from the Phantom Zone, and their main enemy was not Superman; it was Superboy. That was their main enemy. So it wasn't until Superman 2 that Zod gets a whole bunch of light in terms of being a villain. Terrence Stamp did a great job. Everybody loved it. Kneel before Zod. That became his line. It was never a line for him until that film. Great. And after that film, nothing really has been done with Zod to justify, in my mind, him having a solo series. But he gets one. And Joe Casey's writing it. So I said, let me have a go at it. And I read the first issue and I'm like, okay, it's there. But I think this is something that's going to need to be read in fullness. Maybe this might do better in trade at the end of the day, because while I can see Zod as the protagonist, uh, I just never see him being a hero. He doesn't want to be a hero. They don't portray him as a hero. I think the closest we might have got to something where he might have been there is when they had the Superman World of New Krypton storyline running through the Superman books, and Zod, was pretty much the hero of Krypton for lack. I think he was received like that by most of the people, but even in that, he reverts to form. So, I'm reading through this. We've got a lot of the staples that we would want to see. We got Zod looking his most megalomaniacal. He's at odds with his kid. He's got plans working in the background. But I just didn't feel any urgency for the issue that's going to follow this. So, I'm a completist. I'm going to get all the issues and I'll read them. But I do think this is something that's probably going to be more enjoyable in the fullness of a trade paperback.
And right now, you're right. There's not a lot of meat right now. I mean, we're getting a little bit of potatoes. I did enjoy the art. I did enjoy the look of it. I got this version. Yeah, that's the Kneel Before Zod cover. Um, it's the art is pretty good. His fight with his son, it's a little weird. You know,
Kind of whack.
So it's we're trying to understand what's going on here. But you're right. The different types of interpretation of Zod, particularly within what since the 1970s, been um, as him as one of the main.
Well,
Um,
he's been around since the 60s.
no, but I'm
He's
saying
been
that the
around
'70s since '78 movie, I guess, right? Since the '78,
81.
80, yeah, '81 then.
81. 81.
So he has been around. I mean, I look at some of the media, and he's in quite a few of it. He is.
Well, the thing is, but he doesn't really he's not a popular Superman villain or again, he's a Superboy villain. He's a Superboy villain. Him, Ursa, all of those cats, those are Superboy villains. And then every now and then they would play Superman, but they were primarily Superboy villains. And then 81, we get Superman 2, and everybody knows the character. So like, okay, this is great, but he's still one of the Phantom Zone criminals. And then of course, what happens shortly after that is Superboy's series is canceled. It was supposed to start up again, but then Crisis comes, and they're like, well, since we're gonna just never have Superman and Superboy, we're not gonna have those characters anymore. And then of course, you had Superman 22 after the reboot, where John Byrne has Superman kill the Phantom Zone criminal. So you have a large space of time where General Zod is, General Zod, even the Phantom Zone criminals. We're talking maybe like a good 20 years where the General Zod that was, a fixture from the pre-crisis era is nowhere to be seen. And then he's reintroduced, I think, around 2006. So, you know, it's like that was a long-winded way of saying that when he was at his most popular, he got ushered off the stage.
But I mean, he's still one of the top villains for Superman. I mean, what you talk about Lex Luthor, you talk about Brainiac, Darkseid,
He's the top.
Doomsday. So I mean,
He's
he's
one of
definitely
Superman. He is one of Superman's top villains, and he's one of Superman's top villains because of Superman 2. He's never really done anything in the comics to justify being in like that top 10. But people will throw him in the top 10, and everybody knows that line, Kneel before Zod, but it's all the Superman 2 movie. He's never really done anything in the comics to justify being in that top tier. Whereas like somebody like Brainiac, who's really done some stuff over the years and deserves to be there, has never been in a film.
that's true too. I mean, you've seen Zod in so many medias. I mean, in the animation, in the
Yep.
live action, in the TV shows. So
But you don't think that's something though? That this guy, because of the appearance in the Superman 2 movie, that he became so popular everywhere except the comics.
interesting. I mean, that's interesting. It is truly interesting. I mean, but it also shows you the influence of that one particular movie, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, I am not discounting anything that you're saying. He's definitely a top 10. If you told me, hey, put some villains into Superman's top 10, make a top 10 list, Zod would definitely be there. But comic wise, no. Comic wise, no. He's never really done anything. But on Smallville, in the cartoons, in the films, yes. People like General Zod. They like using him, but he's just not amounted to the same importance to the comics, which is which is curiously interesting. I guess in the comics, everybody's like, "What do we do with this guy?" And on film, everybody's like, "Okay, this is what I'm gonna do with him."
So here's a question I have for you. According to this, they're saying this is his first comic book solo
Yeah,
comic.
first solo series. First solo series.
So that is true. That is kind of
Yeah,
wild.
that's true. He's never had a well. Again, that speaks to the point I've been making that in the comics he's really not a hit.
Hmm.
And for obvious reasons too, because you have to look at the popularity of the character. Popularity of the character is what, 81, 82? And but he's still a Superboy villain. And when you get rid of Superboy, you got rid of those particular elements. You got rid of the Phantom Zone, you got rid of Crypto, you got rid of General Zod, Ursa, Nan, Quetzal. You got rid of all of those particular elements because they wanted to simplify Superman to a legend as opposed to a mythical character. And then all the Kryptonian elements pretty much got all the Kryptonian elements for the most part are wiped out. And we don't get. I mean, there's a General Zod that appears later on, but it's not the same one. And then when we finally get back General Zod, General Drew Zod, when we finally get him back, that's like almost 20 years, over 20 years, when the character had hit the height of his popularity.
Okay.
Yeah. So in the comics, he takes a hit, but in the other mediums, these guys are like, hey, they also Superman too. They're like, hey, let's use this guy.
All right. So look, just I would like to give who the artist is. The artist for this was Dan McDade, and I think he does a
Mm-hmm.
great job. And Joe Casey is the writer.
Yeah,
This-
Joe Casey, wrote some really nice Superman stories. So that's one of the reasons I'm on board for this. I want to see if this is a character that Joe Casey can have a go with, especially after. I mean, what we're now 2023, so oh man, it's over 40 years since he was at the height of his popularity.
Interesting, but hey, it could be a revival. One thing that we do know is with the new
That was good.
DCEU being run by Gunn, I don't know what he has in store for. I mean, he's basically the master of the comics and the animation and the live action. So the question is, is there a plan what he's trying to come out with this stuff, or is it just, you know?
Well, he's not going to do anything with Zod. So
All right, well, that's it. So
he's
yeah,
that guy's been. If you have to look at the two characters that have been used the most in terms of Superman villains, it's Lex Luthor and General Zod. And Superman has a top 10 list like most, superheroes do in terms of villains. And almost every film has either been General Zod or Lex Luthor, or they just created some character because they didn't have the rights to that character at any other else at the time. So he's going to definitely go with something other than General Zod. I think he's already said as much.
okay,
But that bit of history aside, I'm on board to see what Casey can do with the character. He's a good writer.
all right. Well, so this we are giving this not a strong love it, but hey, we love to see more. So, all right, Spinnerack.
We're out.
Okay, remember comment, subscribe, thumbs up.
Life